right, guys. Happy Wednesday night. It's your host, Wes Seiler, for the Birkin Conservative, and I am thrilled to be joining you tonight. I hope you're doing well. I hope you had an amazing Easter. It's been a rough couple weeks for me, but it's starting to look on the bright side. I got my COVID vaccine yesterday, so I'm one of those people who tested positive. I was actually positive the day after Christmas, and then for 2 weeks I was down, and then my family was down. My kids had to be quarantined and all that stuff. But I still got the vaccine now. I'm eligible as of last week to get it here in Florida, and so I got that. And then my family's going to be getting it soon. We've had a couple positive cases recently in our extended family, and it did not go well, and so that's been kind of rough with family drama and all that stuff. But we're getting through that, and everybody's going to be okay. But yeah, it's been a rough couple weeks for that. However, Easter was amazing, and I got to show you guys this. This is the cross at the church that I go to. So my wife actually led the team that put this together in our garage. She had all these broken pieces because she was putting them together. You can see the detail on that thing that she put at the center of that. Essentially, it's broken pieces that they put together in the shape of a cross, and then, of course, they filled it with flowers all around it. And this picture doesn't quite do it justice. This thing is like, I don't know, 15, 16 feet high at least. So everybody forms a long line and gets pictures with their families taken at it. And then, of course, it's like you can't miss it, when you're sitting there, even with 1,000 people at the church. It's right up there front and center. And I just got to tell you, even with all the COVID stuff that's gone on, like I said, testing positive a few months ago and having to get vaccinated and family and everything else, it was really cool to see so many people together again, in one space, just having a good time, dressed up, all that stuff. And just the contrast from last year to this year, it was just so much to be grateful for, that we're starting to make it through this thing and get out of it, and life is starting to go back to normal. So I hope that's your experience. I know that on this channel we've got people from all over. My brother is on this channel a lot. He's from Virginia, and being there in Virginia, they're still shut down in a lot of ways. Here in Florida, more and more things are opening up. I walked into a Starbucks today and did not have a mask on, and it's still, they still call me out. But at least now it takes them 30 seconds before yeah, that's right, we're supposed to be doing that. But most places around here, you still don't even have to have one. So it's awesome. So I hope your Easter was great. I hope that you're starting to experience some relief from all the shutdown that's just really, been difficult, the past year to deal with. But I'm so grateful that we're starting to come out of that. We do have some announcements for our channel here. We're always giving people the opportunity to join us. So I love getting your comments and emails, messages. We get all kinds of stuff every week, and it's fun to go through that. If you ever want to be on the channel, I'm happy to have you on here. We've got numerous different ways that you can plug in. So there's Conservatism on Tap. We're going to start that back up this Sunday. Gave everybody time off for Easter for that, but we're going to start that back up on Sunday. So if you want more of a chill atmosphere, you've got that one. And if you want more of a debate, we have that every Sunday as well on our Refounding Fathers show. So if you want to bring your perspective to that, or if you've got a topic that you want us to get into, we're happy to do that. So we talk about all kinds of things on that show. We talked about abortion was a hot button topic for everyone. We brought that up on the show, and I think we're going to get into immigration and guns is what we're talking about next, because both of those are constant points of disagreement between liberals, libertarians, and conservatives. So we're going to bring that up to the forefront and see how we can handle it, the three of us. So if you've got comments, you've got ideas, you've got other topics that you want us to get into, or you got specifics about those, we'd be happy to have them. So we always enjoy it. So I want to get into the substance of tonight in our episode. We titled this The Best and Worst of the Conservative Movement. And what I want to get into tonight is the modern conservative movement, the people who represent it and publicize it, the folks that are out there being influencers who are trying to tell everybody what conservatism is and why they should believe it. That's what I want to look at in this show, and I want to give you my opinion on it. And you may think, well, why should I care at all what Wes has to say about the modern conservative movement? And for me, the conservative movement has always been something that I care deeply about. It's not something that I've been hugely involved in the past several years, mainly because of the work that I've been doing. But coming up through college, I was going to all the conferences. I was spending time with a lot of the people whose names you know now. And I've been watching over the past really 8 or 9 years how the conservative movement has grown and where it's directed its focus. And there's a lot of good in terms of what the conservative movement has been doing. So don't take this as a critique only, because there are many things I've seen the conservative movement do that are good things, that are a form of progress, and that have probably bred a lot more conservatives than what we would have if they hadn't been done that way. At the same time, I think there are things that we could be doing better as a movement. So that's what I'm going to give you in this show, is really a look at how I see the conservative movement, some things that we need to continue doing, and then maybe some things that we could do a little bit better in the near and long term. So, three things. Let's do the positive first. Three things that we are currently doing well. And the way I look at this is, during my lifetime, during the past 30 years, how has the conservative movement changed? What are we doing well that maybe we weren't doing as well when I was a kid, or even maybe 5 or 10 years ago? That's what I'm thinking about here. So, and then we're going to get to those three things that we aren't doing well after that, after we fleshed out the good stuff. Number one, owning libs. And everybody knows this. By this, I mean, whenever there is a debate between a conservative and a liberal, it's almost assumed that the conservative is going to have the more rational position. Most of the guys that you see on this picture and many other folks who are conservatives have came up by doing just this. As the conservative movement, we now have different advocates who go out there and will talk circles around most liberals at any type of public forum that you want. And this is awesome because we get all kinds of followers and attention. People love to see conflict. They love to see debates. And that's exactly what we have going on with this, is that the conservative movement has made a name for itself being able to debate, dissect, discuss, and humiliate liberals in a variety of different fashions, right? And that's, in many ways, that can be a helpful thing, because we need to be able to show that there is intellectual strength, that there are arguments that support conservatism. And so we do that on a daily basis. I think about Steven Crowder saying, change my mind. And he's got, his table that he sets up at college campuses, and then he has these debates. Think about Ben Shapiro and how he's come up being able to tell people, hey, conservatism actually makes a lot of rational sense, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. Many, many others who go about doing this. That's a good thing. That's something that I think we're doing well. Two, and probably even more important here, is that we're very good, I would say, at fighting for life, guns, and freedom. I mean, this essentially is conservatism today. Is one of these, or a combination of these issues, is what you will find a conservative talking about 90% of the time. Is we are talking about the abortion debate, we are talking about the Second Amendment, or we are talking about personal or individual freedom. So you think back to, I was just talking about COVID. In the past year of COVID, it's almost always been a debate about freedom for conservatives, is the freedom to not have to wear a mask, the freedom to continue operating your business the way that you want. So much of this has been about freedom. Freedom to not get a vaccine if you don't want it. Freedom to be able to travel and not be restricted at home. That's been a big part of our argument. I think you're going to see now, and in the next days to come, huge arguments about the Second Amendment and fighting the Biden administration on Second Amendment rights, and then on abortion. And it's not just the arguments that we're making here. The effect of our causes is starting to take root. Look at this. This is the abortion rate in the United States. And look how it's fallen in the 1990s, the 2000s, and then even more drastically going into present day. What we have seen is that, to some degree, this has to be related to the pro-life cause. Education, adoption, those type of things play into it for certain. But I don't believe we would see this stark decline if it wasn't for the pro-life message getting out there. So you see these type of things going on, and that's amazing that we are being successful at those causes. Number three, popularizing the message. I think this is an amazing thing that I think I've seen happen in probably the past 5 or 6 years in particular. When I was in college, I worked for a congressman, and he went to this small little conference called CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference. And while he was there, a few hundred folks came out to hear him speak. We walked, met some people behind the curtain, and then there he was at a hotel speaking. Now you go to CPAC, and there are thousands and thousands of people. It is practically a festival. It is an incredible thing. You have the president speaking at it. I remember a time where that would have been unthinkable. I remember the first CPAC where Rush Limbaugh decided to come. That was huge. That was huge. That was when I was in college. And now CPAC is the event. But more than just conferences, you think about PragerU with their videos that are animated, that are kind of educating people on the spot, the sound clips, the Instagram, the Twitter. All of this is part of conservatism, not just being something that maybe your parents believe, but actually making it accessible and relevant to the current generation. That's an amazing thing. Looks like we got our first comment here from Payne. I'm going to bring this up for you, brother, so we can talk about it and read it live right here. We are a country built on ideas strongly defended and debated. The public square is where it was then and where it needs to be again. Oh man, that's good stuff, Payne. I really appreciate that comment. We're gonna get into that a little bit more, so I'm probably gonna bring your comment here back up in just a second because I love what you're saying. Let's take a look here. So 3 things. Now I want to get into this, and don't take this as, oh well, Wes hates the conservative movement, or he can't stand these people, or this. No, these are things that I am thinking about the conservative movement over the past 30 years. And these are 3 things that I think we need to add. So I'm not saying that we need to get rid of anything that I just talked about, but there are things that I think that we could do better, and we could learn from previous people who led the conservative movement to add these things to what we're doing, which would make us even more effective. So I don't criticize from a standpoint of, hey, they need to shut it down or completely change what they're doing. But I do think there are some things that we can do better. So if we have weaknesses, these are the 3 that I see that are most glaring. Number 1, I think we have a weakness when it comes to fighting for lower spending. I mean, do people even talk about this anymore? It seems like as conservatives, we have just given up the notion of trying to get the deficit down, trying to get spending down, especially entitlement spending. There used to be a time where it seemed like the conservative movement cared deeply about this, but in the modern era, it has just gotten worse and worse and worse as we've gotten to a point where we really aren't bothered by it. But I remember different times, especially when Obama was president, that we used to hear about this every single day, and it seemed like conservatives were leading the charge to try to rein in federal spending and try to limit it so that we weren't essentially giving up our heritage, devaluing our currency, and selling it to China. Because whenever our debt is financed, we are essentially giving away more and more of our sovereignty as a country overseas to people who finance our debt, or to corporations who do the same thing. This is a chart right here, and I'll expand it here just for a second so that you can see it. And if you want a copy of this, I'll be happy to give it to you. It's from Fiscal News. And the next one I have is from the Treasury Department. This shows you the deficit, all right? And the orange there is the surplus. Who was president during that surplus? It was not a Republican. It was a Democrat, going back to Bill Clinton in those years before George Bush was even in office. And then you get into these eras of these bars right here showing you the deficit growing during the Bush administration. You see the Great Recession that he ended it off with, and then Obama takes over, and you see that spending continuing to rise. And you would think with the Republican administration and Trump coming back around that the spending would continue to go back down, but it actually dropped more during the Obama era. And then it was picking up even before COVID. Even before COVID happened, we were seeing a huge increase in federal spending. Is this still a priority for us? Take a look at this chart as well. This one right here breaks it down a little bit more clear in the past few years, as you see that budget deficit doubling since 2015. And this is essentially something that I think most Democrats and Republicans seem to agree on. They may not say it, but they seem to be okay with us spending exorbitant amounts of money. Now, someone could say, okay, well, it's a crisis, but even when we're not in crisis, it seems like we seem to be okay with that amount of spending. And I would love to see the conservative movement be able to hold both parties accountable, whether you're Republican or Democrat, to your spending levels and to be the party of fiscal responsibility. Number two, and this kind of goes along with it, but it's a slightly different critique, is fighting for small government. Obviously, if you have a government that's smaller, then it's going to be one that's going to spend less. But that's not the only meaning that I have behind this. When I say fighting for small government, I mean government that is limited or that doesn't concentrate power all in one person. And I understand the argument for Trump and that something needed to be done to be able to change the system. I totally get that. However, as we move forward, I would love to see us start to have a philosophy again that breaks down government, empowers the states, empowers the local governments, and sees that as the answer more than just one person, whether it's Trump or his kids or Ron DeSantis or whomever. It seems like so much of the conservative movement is about certain individuals. There is a desire almost always for power. And once we get that power, I would love to see us decentralize it. I would love to see us break it up. I would love to see us celebrate local action and civilian action and everyday heroes. That, to me, is a conservative philosophy that can last, as opposed to one where you kind of put all of your hope into one particular office, whether that's the Supreme Court or the presidency, whatever. There's so much more to be gained, I think, when we start to celebrate the everyday lives of Americans, because when you see that, you see all kinds of answers to the arguments. A great example is this abortion debate. Is we can talk for hours and hours about the Supreme Court and how Roe v. Wade needs to be overturned, and I think that we should spend a lot of time doing that. But at the same time, there are things that we can be highlighting and celebrating every single day that are part of the pro-life cause. And when we do that, we put the focus there, all of a sudden we're starting to change people's minds on a day-to-day level, which only helps us as we start to try to change the way government functions. I would love to see us fight for small government, local government, the separation of powers, all these things that are supposed to be what Americans have. But what I see a lot of times in the conservative movement is we seem to just want to win elections. If we win elections, great, then we win the next one. Great, then we win the one after that. That's not enough. We need to win elections to be able to change the structure of government back to what it's supposed to be. And that leads me to my final critique, which is we need to get better at enacting the founders' vision. It seems to me the conservative movement has gotten more and more partisan, and we have gotten away from some of the warnings that George Washington gave us, some of the principles that James Madison, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin gave us, and we need to get back to how they wanted this country to run. And it was not having a strong government that told you what to do and that was constantly trying to consolidate power. And it definitely was not one where every American had to be in one political party, and if you weren't part of that party, then you were completely against them. I think that where we're headed as a movement is kind of open-ended, and I would love to see us start to quote the founders more, to put some faith in their vision, to be able to talk about those things and bring that to the forefront of what we're doing, and to get away from elections being the end-all, be-all, and constantly being beholden to the Republican Party. It seems like today there's almost no difference between the conservative movement and the Republican Party. And we need to get away from that, because the conservative movement needs to be bigger than any political party, because that's how we actually encompass what the founders wanted to do. Here's that quote from George Washington. You could look at his farewell address, a lot of his writings. He was very suspicious of political parties and their power over people and how they were constantly fighting each other, and they had an incentive to do so. He said the alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge natural to party dissension, is itself a frightful despotism. And what that means is that when you have these parties and they agree on a lot of stuff, but they make it seem like they actually hate each other, then that's actually a form of tyranny right there, is that you're just going back and forth. And if you think about the Republican and Democratic parties, they neither one of them wants to see a third party. Neither one of them wants to see libertarians or anybody else or Constitution Party or any of that enter the scene. What they want to do is just go back and forth because they know either one of them or the other is going to win an election. And the minute that they lose an election, they go back to their base and say, oh, you hate the Democrats, or oh, you hate the Republicans. Now you need to give me more money. Now you need to give me some more support so that I can go beat them. And if they win an election, then they enjoy the power and they continue to be able to ping off of what their opponents are saying. We need something more than that, because I don't think any one particular party is ever going to be good enough for this country alone. And I don't think that they can actually encompass all the ideas behind conservatism. And I would love to see something so much more that is truly trying to capture the different ideas that are out there, because, again, no one party could do it. And I think Washington understood that. I think most of the founders understood that. But today, I don't know if most conservatives do. So got a couple comments here. This is my conclusion, though, before I get to your comments, is the conservative movement must continue to reach people, right? Again, that's going back to the good things that they are doing. They must continue to reach people while re-becoming the movement of limited government. I think if we can kind of rediscover that philosophy while also keeping all the lessons that we've learned from Donald Trump, from these guys that you see pictured here, all the progress we've made with sound bites and clicks and podcasts and YouTube, we can start to do that and also meld in a really good philosophy. I think we're going to be very, very powerful for the future and do a lot of good. All right, so let's get to your comments here. All right, so Payne, let me bring back up your first comment, and then I'll get to your new ones because you actually had quite a few here. You said, we're a country built on ideas strongly defended and debated. The public square is where it was then and where it needs to be again. That's an interesting thing that you bring up, because the public square has changed a lot, and now it's accessible by everyone. That's something that's changed regardless of where you fall politically. Now the public square is accessible by your phone, right? As you can sit here and talk to a whole group of people, most of which you probably don't even know, on Twitter or Facebook, just like that. Whereas before you had to get up and travel. That's made it very informal. And I'm sure you've noticed that people can be a lot more bold on their phone than they are in person. And with that, the communication kind of suffers. And conservatives are starting to figure out ways, I think, to be able to steer the conversation without the institutions that the left has. And that's pretty cool. But where are we steering it to has kind of been my question. PragerU, Epoch Times. Yeah, I'm a big fan of, the videos that they do to be able to try to educate people on topics. I see them a little bit differently sometimes. A lot of times they come from a notion of conservatism that's very different than the books that you see behind me, that doesn't really include the Burkean aspect of who Edmund Burke was and some of the tradition. But overall, I think it's been very effective to get people to care about the movement. And then you said local is connected to country. Or I'm sorry, local is connected to county, county is connected to state, state is connected to D.C., goal of re-election. They are all fighting for taxpayer dollars. We need citizen representation again, not seasoned politicians. Yeah, I agree with that. Payne, is that we need participatory democracy. And by that, I mean the type of activism where you do more than just vote, right? If you put on the ballot, do you want to overturn Roe v. Wade? I would say absolutely I do. But that alone is not enough to handle the situation. What we need to do is to have places for single mothers to go. What we need to do is to have adoption ready. We need to have people who are reaching out and educating folks on what their options are and how to not get into these situations where they would make that terrible choice. Law alone is only going to do part of it. We need citizens to get involved on the issues and care and to do things. We also need them to hold their local governments accountable. It seems like most folks, and I've been guilty of this plenty of times in my life, it seems like almost everybody knows what's going on in D.C., but what about your local government or your state government? Do you know who your mayor is? Do you know who your city manager is? Do you know who your congressperson is? Those type of people as well affect you every single day. And knowing who they are, knowing what they stand or where they stand on certain issues, and then being able to go out and meet them and say, hey, I need you to work on this or work on that, get involved as opposed to just being consumers. I think we agree on that, because that when you have that type of thing going on, you don't just have politicians and then the people in this big divide. You actually have the people being involved in the same work that the politicians are doing, and then you can see what they're actually, whether they're doing it well or not. And I think that's what our founders intended. You got a bunch of other comments here. I appreciate all your comments, Payne. Let me get through these last ones. Reach people. Yes. Yep. Conservative movement is good at that. And citizens have a very big role in our own governments. Yeah. For me, that is a philosophy that's empowering. Is we can sit here and we can hate liberals all day. We can talk bad about them and say they're dumb and stupid and all these things. But that's not going to change anything. It makes us feel better, and we can ridicule them and whatever. But how do we actually make things better in our country and in our life? And if you're trusting the president to do it, it doesn't matter if it's the greatest president in the history of presidents. That's not how our system was designed, is for some single person to make everything better for us. You have to take action. You have to take action in your own life to make your life better, to make your area better, and ultimately your country better. And where I think with the society we live in today has shifted towards, everything's kind of like very convenient, and we're all consumers, right? Like you can go on your phone with Amazon, swipe a button, and then you don't even have to go to a retail store to get some clothes. You can hit a button and Walmart will deliver groceries to your front door. Things are getting easier and easier, and we're kind of used to being served like this. That's awesome. I enjoy that. But at the same time, there are times when you need to cut your own grass. You know what I'm saying? There are times when you need to take care of your own life. You need to do things for yourself to prove to it that you can, and because you can actually be a provider and have some purpose that you get out of that. And I think that's my concern with the modern conservative movement, is it's not enough to just trust Donald Trump or Ben Shapiro or Charlie Kirk or any of these guys to go fight the liberals for you, right? We have to do that. There have been memes that have been shared or pictures and stuff, and it's kind of got like Donald Trump, and he's like, I'm just keeping the left from getting to you. And I understand where that's coming from, and it's coming from a really good place. But at the same time, if that's what we believe, well, what are we doing? What are we doing to be able to make a difference? It's not enough for one guy to go out there, even if he is the president, to be able to solve stuff. Because what happens if, you see what happened in the last election where he, gets kicked out of office, and now we're here. Now we're here where we got somebody else doing it. The conservative movement needs to be bigger. It needs to be about empowering people in every single state and every single county with things that they can do to be able to make a difference, even if that's a small thing. And I think that we can easily change some of our messaging to be able to give people stuff to do. You listen to these conservative leaders today, and they're very, very smart, right? They get on TV, they get on their podcasts and YouTube channels. They're super smart, and they debate circles around a liberal, and then everybody laughs at the liberal, and then we go home and we feel better. There's a purpose for that. However, I would also like to see us educating each other so that we can have these conversations, so that we understand where these ideas come from, and we're not just trusting somebody's cerebral cortex, right? We're not just trusting one guy's reasoning or regurgitating his arguments. We can actually start to discover this stuff on our own. So that's what I do with this channel, and I think that other conservatives can do the same thing. That's why I name it after Burke. That's why I talk about him all the time, and I have his books and engage with you guys, is because I don't want the conservative movement to be limited when there's so many things that we can do positively that just adjust our future in a productive way that will make us more effective and be able to combine what we're doing great now and also learn from what we've done well in the past. So, hey, Payne, thank you for your comments, man. I really appreciate it. It's always a lot of fun whenever we have you guys on here commenting. It gives me something else to be able to add on to the show, and we get to interact live. Let me know what you think. Are there things that I'm off on this episode? Or do you see the conservative movement differently? And are there other things that we're doing well that I missed? Is there ways that we could start to enact some of these changes right now with what we do? I'd love to hear about it. Don't forget our YouTube channel. The Birkin Conservative, as well as our website, thebirkinconservative.com. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, a bunch of other platforms. So let us know if there's a topic that you want me to get into. I'm happy to do it. That's why I do this channel. Don't forget what we said at the beginning, that we've got shows coming up on Sunday. 8:30 Central is going to be Refounding Fathers, and then 9 p.m. is going to be Conservatism on Tap. So again, hope you had a great Easter. Hope you had a great week. I'll see you in 4 days for our next show. Have a good one.